Beautiful, beautiful images of South Laguna. Thank you, James, for putting that together. Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to South Laguna Civic Association's Candidates Forum. My name is Greg O'Loughlin. Tonight, we'll be hearing from all of our candidates for City Council. Elections are coming up November 8th. Laguna Beach is typically well represented. So we've all seen many changes in our city in recent years, but our focus tonight will be emphasizing issues that are near and dear to us here in south of Nice Place. May I encourage anyone watching who's not already a member to join us at southlaguna.org. I'll send you a link here in just a sec. And it takes a lot to pull one of these things together. So I'd personally like to thank Cindy Love, Scott Sebastian, John Thomas, Mike Beenan, and Christoph, as well as James Henry, who's going to be our host for tonight's questions. So James, it's all yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm James Henry, Vice President of the South Laguna Civic Association. I have a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll go over some of the timing and protocols for how we're going to run this as soon as I'm done. The South Laguna Civic Association has been working for the benefit of our community since 1946. South Lagunans were instrumental in forming the water and sanitary districts, guiding land use decisions through the County of Orange, preserving our hillside open space and trails, and creating Village Green and Fred Lang parks. Despite our objections, South Laguna has lost some of our treasured community services and amenities. Aliso School is closed, and so was our very own library. South Laguna has now been a part of Laguna Beach for 35 years. Some of us remember meeting with Ken Frank, city manager at the time of annexation. He had calculated the amount of income to the city from South Laguna beyond the funds needed to serve us. He promised he would budget for projects each year from those funds to do projects that would help to bring our infrastructure and amenities in line with services in the rest of the city. The first increment was drainage improvements, which were accomplished. After that, the concept of community upgrades in South Laguna being funded from city funds was forgotten. With two of the largest hotels in town in South Laguna, the Montage and the Ranch, our community contributes significant bed tax revenue. Because all of South Laguna is close to the ocean and its valuable views, we also contribute much property tax to the city income coffers. Yet the city cannot point to significant investments in South Laguna in all those years. While the upcoming St. Catherine's School purchase will bring welcome opportunities for citywide amenities, South Laguna neighborhood parks and garden, water quality, sidewalks, restroom, and other improvements are still needed. Our forum will cover those needs, and we hope our candidates will be dedicated to seeing that these issues will be addressed. So let's hear from them. So we're going to go over, we have a myriad of questions that have been sent out to the candidates ahead of time. We're going to ask them in a slightly different order. I'm going to tell you the question that we're doing at the time that I read it, so you'll have plenty of time. We're going to give each panelist a minute to answer. Cindy, can you show your 15-second? Okay, so that's going to flash up on Cindy's screen. Can everybody see that? No. Are you guys in gallery view? No. Or are you in? Okay. And then at the end, Cindy, time's up. So we're going to let you finish your sentence. If it goes on, we're going to cut you off just because we have 7 people and we have a lot to cover. Does anybody have any questions?
Ruben, you got to unmute yourself if you want to talk.
There you go, Ruben.
I'm not seeing what she might have held up or not.
Are you in gallery view, Ruben, or are you just with yourself or whoever's talking? So go to the top right corner, see that little icon that says view, and you can change that to gallery, and that'll show all the panelists on your screen at once.
I see them all. I just didn't see her.
So you see where it says 15 seconds now?
Yes, got
and
that.
Then change it to the last one, Cindy. Time's up. So that'll be, we've had people break in and do it with an audio thing, and it was very disruptive, and we didn't want to do that this year.
Gotcha.
Sue?
Yeah, just a question, if you guys can, when you ask the questions, we have a lot of questions here. Can you give us the category, like infrastructure?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'll say within fire, this is question 3.
Okay.
And you can go to that.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Anybody else? Well, welcome everyone. We have 65 people in the room so far, which is good. So I'm going to start with question 3, which is an infrastructure question. And this has to do with sidewalks. The Coast Highway is extremely unsafe, even for single pedestrians, and even more so for the crowds that walk in traffic during the summer. The city is contributing $10 million towards a Caltrans project to provide a 4-foot wide walkway along one side of Coast Highway from Ruby Street to the hospital in South Laguna. The proposed walk is too narrow. The city requires a minimum width of 5 feet and Caltrans requires 8 feet. There are important links missing along the inland side of Coast Highway, and the project does not complete the ocean side from 3rd Avenue to the hospital. Additionally, there are no plans for walks on either side of the 1-mile stretch of the highway southward from the hospital to the city line at the south end of 3 Arch Bay, which means that there will be no safe pedestrian walkway to Thousand Steps Beach. In short, the Caltrans project fails to adequately address our decades-old concerns about improved safety and pedestrian mobility. What would you do to bring about the installation of safe and adequately wide sidewalks along the entire length of Coast Highway? So I'm going to tell you guys the order in which to answer. Sue, you're up first, and this will change every question.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, James. So there are parts of Coast Highway that, installing sidewalks on the inland side would require really tall, expensive retaining walls. So I'm not sure that's the best place to have sidewalks on those segments. On the other segments, the council's already programmed funding into the CIP, the 10-year CIP, for example, 7th Street to 10th Street, then 10th to Arch Beach Heights to design and build sidewalks to fill those gaps where Caltrans not building them. And I think once we take over Coast Highway, it's going to be much easier and faster to build sidewalks ourselves. I think we can make Coast Highway much safer, not only from a pedestrian standpoint of walkability, but slow traffic and implementing calming measures and get things done much faster than Caltrans would.
Mark, you're up next.
Well, I agree. I think that there's definitely advantages if the city took over Coast Highway from Caltrans. Not sure if it's completely feasible until there's an analysis done and all of the liabilities considered. I do think that we should shoot for a minimum of 5 feet regarding the sidewalks. I did look around for some easement maps on Coast Highway today, just so I could get a better understanding of what would be required to really gain access to the properties in order to make the cuts necessary for those sidewalks. Couldn't find them. So I'm assuming that the city would need to get some grading easements to cut into those hills. I think that some of the retaining walls could be done with the steel I-beams and the timbers, similar to what's been done thus far. So I do think some of them are possible, and it might take a combination of some cutting and retaining, and then maybe in a few areas there has to be some parking places removed to realign the highway eventually when that time comes. So I think it's possible. I think we should.
Mark, I had to cut you off. Sorry. Ruben, you're up next.
Thank you. And I want to thank the South Laguna Civic Association for putting this together and for giving us that little tour on Saturday. It was very helpful. This is a big concern. As we were doing our tour, we saw many people just taking a jaywalking jaunt across Coast Highways. Some of them was just 1 or 2 people. Another group was about 8 people. And they were not going at a corner. They were just running across anywhere. But even in your write-up, there's a 5-foot, there's a 4-foot, and then there's an 8-foot. Caltrans is actually installing something that is inferior to Caltrans' own recommendations. It's kind of strange. Obviously, what needs to happen is we need to have a master plan first. And that doesn't need to be months or a year of planning. It could actually happen very quickly. Like Mark said, let's go measure, find out where the slopes need to be cut back. We saw on our walk some cuts that have already been done. Whoa, that goes quick.
Ruben's paying attention. So thank you. Peter, you're up next. Peter, you're muted.
When you bring up Caltrans, the word disaster comes up. If we look at what a mess we're in all over town, it's hard to imagine answering a question like this when we have gaping holes in North Laguna and all the way through. Now, that's not to say we can't do something about it, but I would prefer to buy the street and then do a comprehensive look at what we need to do with this. Because, the retaining walls would have to be really high to make this thing work. And it just doesn't make any sense at this point. But, if you're asking the simple question, which is, do I want sidewalks that go from the beginning to the end of town? I do. Do I want to make arrangements to have that happen? I will.
Louis, you're next.
So yeah, I think the other candidates, went to the point. I think the project's a good start, but it's not a complete project, nor does it necessarily meet the desires of the overall community. I am supportive of taking the evaluation of Caltrans, getting that right of ways back, but we do need to look at all the modals of transportation, biking, walking. Our walkability in town is challenged from end to end. We have to start addressing those things. It's something I've been campaigning on, but we also need to look at other opportunities for revenue and evaluating maybe parking meters added so we can pay for some of these amenities as we go forward, and that needs to be incorporated as well. So,
Jerome?
I pretty much concur with everyone. I mean, we must have adequate pedestrian pathways. It's just mandatory. How we do it, I would suggest leaving Caltrans to do what they're going to do. Once they're done, take control of the Coast Highway and come back in and do the infill necessary to get it to adequate standards. And like Louis, I also would, I know it may be unpopular, but I would suggest at least taking a look at doing some meters installed to help pay for the costs. There are stretches where they wouldn't necessarily drive people looking for free parking into the community. That is key. But a usual meter pays out about $4,200 a year. So it would be helpful.
And Alex.
Thank you. So I just want to start by thanking the South Laguna Civic Association for this forum today, but also for the generous scholarship that you gave me before I went to college. I really appreciate that and all the work that you do for this community. I think I agree with all the other candidates. We can't, this issue before us is not really just about sidewalks, but of a fundamental problem of not having local control over the highway that bisects through Laguna Beach. I think we need to immediately look at the feasibility of having Caltrans relinquish Coast Highway, and then we need to look at sidewalks, we need to look at traffic calming measures, we need to look at lowering the speed limit, look at enforcement. We need a comprehensive approach. I think if you look at Dana Point and you look at CDM, their Coast Highway is much better than ours, and the reason is simple. They control it. We should do the same, and I support looking at that immediately. Thank you.
Okay. The next question is from the same category. It's actually question 1. And there's a video. My daughter is going to introduce this one.
Hello everyone, my name is Julia Henry. I am a proud South Laguna resident, born and raised, and I'm a product of LBUSD schools, and I'm really interested to hear what you all have to say today on the different issues that pertain to our city. So my question is about recycled wastewater from the Aliso Canyon plant. So the South Coast Water District is already producing recycled water from its plant in Aliso Canyon. That water is being used for irrigation in selected parts of South Laguna, but not in the rest of the city. Over time, we may expect further reductions in the availability of potable water and thus further restrictions on its use for irrigation. Furthermore, recycled water significantly reduces the amount of wastewater going into the ocean. Thus, we believe that expanding the capacity of the recycled water distribution system has important and valuable benefits for the city and for the environment. Thus, my question is, would you support the expansion of the recycled water facilities capacity and the extension of the recycled network in additional areas of the city? Thank you so much.
Okay, so first up with this question is Peter.
The answer is no. It's way too expensive to run those water lines from the Montage up.
Okay, next is Lewis.
Yeah, so in general, I mean, I think we have to rethink our water use, and recycled waters definitely being at the forefront of use. I think I am supportive of it, but it needs to pencil, and it needs to be balanced with kind of other programs: overall water quality, environmental impact, fire safety, and recreational improvements. El Toro plant also has recycled, but getting this recycled done, I believe, is about $1 million a mile to cultivate that. I think the state's trying to alleviate some of that cost by allowing existing pipes to be reused for recycled water, which I think is coming in 2023. But I do think we need to continue to explore this further. But you know, it's a matter of balancing the cost and the overall benefits to the water use.
Sue?
Yeah, thank you, James. So the problem we have is that we don't have, from the Montage North, we don't have, the pipes aren't there. And Laguna County Water District is, Laguna Beach County Water District did a study to see if we could bring, you know, recycled water in. And they don't have it in their work plan right now. I know they've been talking to Molten Miguel Water District about this and looking at opportunities, and they're having an ongoing dialogue. But it's a huge infrastructure expenditure to do that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, because I think recycled water is going to be the way of our world going forward, among other things that are going to be caused by, you know, environmental complexities. So we need to spend some, you know, really good time thinking about this and what is the best way to do it.
Jerome?
I have to concur with everyone else. I shouldn't say everyone else. But yeah, I would look at it, but again, it's the cost. We've got to find a way to pay for it. Water usage is going to be critical. We all know that. Yeah, you know, the continuing droughts that we're experiencing, water is going to become the new liquid gold, and we know it. So find a way.
Ruben?
Absolutely, yes. It's not time to think about it. It's time to act on it. And when they got it to the Montage, we should have looked at taking it forward. And it'd be like not promoting electric cars or alternative cars. It's time for us to do that, and we need to do that now. It is a matter of trenching, but it is a matter of planning. And if there's trenching, we can go ahead and put something else inside that trench when it's open. We can do the sidewalks when they're open. We can figure out ways to spread the cost over more than just the landscape. Also, too, look at the Montage. How much are they using for water because of the lawn? So we need to be thrifty about our water use as well. It shouldn't be something because once we get purple pipe water that we're throwing it away. We need to be thrifty about the use of that water. Very important.
Alex?
I think so. With climate change and persistent drought on our horizon, we need to look at every tool in the toolbox to help expand our use of recycled water and also make sure we have a local water supply. I was at the Pacific Marine Mammal Center last week on a tour, and it's very exciting about their new facility that'll allow them to, I think, reduce their water usage by 90%. So that kind of innovative and forward thinking is what I'm all about. And I agree with my fellow candidates that the question is about the trade-offs and the cost involved with the distribution of recycled water. So I'm in favor of using recycled water wherever we can and expanding our distribution, as long as the cost makes sense and it's the most cost-effective way to ensure that we're addressing our water needs right here. The one thing I'll point out is the Orange County Water District has the largest reuse facility in the world, so that's something we can look at. Thank you.
And Mark?
I'm definitely supportive of the reuse of water. And I think that this goes for other environmental projects as well. I think that we need to start planning for it and loosely put it into the strategic plan for the city. Reason being, you never know when there's going to be federal funds available for shovel-ready projects. And if you have your plan and you have, if you're ready to go, then you're going to be a candidate to receive those funds. So I think it needs to be a part of our plan. And then we'll just, of course, I'm concerned about the money, but we'll just have to, see how that plays out as time goes by.
Okay, so the next question following suit is question 2 from the same category. And it says, all of Laguna's wastewater, along with wastewater from other cities, is processed in the coastal treatment plant in Aliso Canyon. Every day, nearly 10 million gallons of treated but still contaminated water is discharged into the ocean 1.5 miles off Aliso Beach. The plant is old and in serious need of upgrading or replacement. Frankly, we do not think that any wastewater should be going into the ocean. There are technologies available to make that possible, and other cities in our region have reduced their effluent discharge to 0. Do you support setting a schedule for ending the disposal of effluent in the ocean? And do you think our city should lead such an effort? And the first panelist up is Ruben. You need to unmute, Ruben.
Gotcha. Yes, I definitely want to see this happen. I would encourage Laguna Beach to start scheduling summits where we invite other cities and other municipalities and other success stories to come in and work with us and hear how they did it and how they made it successful for their town. We're pretty insular here in Laguna Beach. Some of us don't even like to go from South Laguna to North Laguna, let alone consider what someone might have done in Northern California. So yes, we need to take a look at our environment. PR from when we do pollute the ocean is just unbelievable how much you have to backpedal for why we didn't and where were we looking and why didn't we think of this and how conscientious are we. So I think it's something that we need to put down, pencil in, figure it out, and let's do it on a county basis so that we're getting assistance. Thank you.
Mark, you're next.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of it. And I think that we should be the leaders in it. The technology exists. And again, we have a long to-do list. I think that it needs to, if it was up to me, it would go into the priority in that to-do list. But I am very much in favor of it.
Alex?
The blue belt is a defining feature of Laguna Beach without a doubt. So we have an obligation to do whatever we can to protect our ocean and to keep ocean water clean. I think that this is something I know Councilmember Eisman represents the city on SCWA, so it's something where it could be a part of their strategic plan and working with the cities and the water districts on there. I also think it should be part of our strategic plan about what we can do to reduce the discharges into the ocean. But I think we all love our ocean, and we have to do everything in our power to protect it and to ensure that future generations and the wildlife in it can remain there.
Jerome? You need to unmute, Jerome.
Absolutely. Once again, I think it's one of our primary objectives in Laguna Beach. The same issue how we're going to pay for it keeps popping up. I know the technologies are there. I know it can be done, and I want to see it done. Yeah, that's basically it. It's got to be.
Sue?
So so when you go to the coastal treatment plant, you learn that the water discharge through the outfall is highly regulated, and it's tested and overseen by the Water Quality Control Board. It's it's summarized every year and given to us. While it's not drinkable status, it doesn't classify as contaminated. The facility itself has undergone about $10 million worth of improvements since that were finished in 2021, which included like electrical, mechanical, structural changes. This project is not really in serious need of upgrade. We spent a bunch of money. We both contributed, South Coast Water District and us as well. South Coast Water District does have a water filtration system to site and pull out the salts out of water, which is really great. This is a very dynamic field, but both water districts are continuing to understand and explore every opportunity. And this should be science-based initiatives that we work on.
Lewis.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, recognizing that the infrastructure is challenged, I think it's more of a conversation for the taxpayers and the water bills, and what the threshold that the taxpayers are willing to, come to the game with, because it affects the pocketbooks of South Laguna and other neighboring communities. And if it's in their top priorities, I think we do need to explore it. I did find out that, the water is treated or tested in 30 different locations. And right now we have a passing rate. Can we keep improving on that? Yes. And can we try to limit that? But I don't have an answer for a specific timeline. I'd work more closely with the water commissioners and the SACWA boards to see where that is in their priorities. But I think there's more pressing things that we can do. But if this is something of priority to the taxpayers in their water bills, it's definitely something that can be explored further. I also think we do need to keep looking at our storm drain water systems and how to also reduce exposure and contaminants that are coming from those off season and on season.
And Peter.
The water's tested. It's incorrect to call it contaminated. It's not broken. I don't see why we would spend tens of millions of dollars to fix it. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question has to do with fire. It's question number 4. And I've got a little video that goes along with it. While there are multiple potential sources of disaster for our community, wildfire is widely considered to be the most serious single threat. We support many of the measures that the city has taken to counter the threat, but we believe that further action is necessary. It seems to us that one of the most obvious actions the city could take would be the creation of a firefighting irrigation system along the edge of the greenbelt with reserve tanks and water cannons using recycled water to douse the edge of the greenbelt during fire alerts. Would you support the creation of such a system? Yeah. Lewis, you're first on this one.
Yeah, so I mean, I think fire is obviously of the biggest concern. We've had a fire in South Laguna of recent, and it's something we need to keep exploring. I'm excited to see new Chief King's assessment completed and the recommendations that come from that. I think, in short, yes, I want to explore those options and how we find mutual benefit for doing that. I think when you look at, say, the Arch Beach Heights Park that's off Quivira, where it's a little fire break where it blends between the environment and the houses or the private properties, but it's managed zones, managed areas. I think those are the types of treatments we need to figure out, and how these kind of watering devices can be deployed in conjunction with the recreation, the beautification, and the environment. We have to think multidimensionally on this solve. But I'll also look for recommendations from the EDPC on what tools to provide, because some of the recommendations of they're the fire. Yeah, my time's up.
Thanks, Lois. Alex.
I agree that fire poses the most significant threat to our community, and we need to be proactive about finding solutions that prevent fire from happening and mitigate it if it were to happen, to ensure that it doesn't become a disaster. I think that we always need to be looking at what does the evidence say, what do the fire experts say, what does the science say. There's certainly promise to this idea, but the question will be, is this the highest and best use of our funds that we allocate for preventing fires? And I don't know the answer to that question. So my approach when it comes to fire and public safety is to follow the experts and follow the science and do what we can to be proactive about preventing fire, because there's really no issue that's more important than that.
Peter.
I voted for every single issue that's come before the council regarding fire safety. It's something I take very seriously. For me, the real approach is just making sure that we're looking at the defense and also the offense. And right now, we're doing everything we can with defensible space, with the fire mitigation, everything that we have looked at that looked like it was reasonable, we've already done. And, I love the work with the helicopters picking up the water. I love the situation that we put into place where we have a bullhorn technically that even if power went down, we wouldn't lose our ability to reach out to our neighbors that are up in the hills. I'm very, very confident and feel very comfortable that this council has done everything in its power.
Thank you. Mark.
All technology moves rapidly. I think we should definitely be open to new technologies. If this is one of them, then it should be considered. I do know that it is something that is used in private projects, water cannons. So I think that it would be a viable to understand it and to study it.
Jerome. I wish I could unmute you, but unfortunately I can't.
I love the idea. I think it'd be just terrific. But once again, I'm kind of a broken record on this. We've got to see the costs. I mean, one of the estimates I heard was somewhere between $30 and $50 million. So, that's a big investment. I would look into seeing what other alternatives are available to us out there. I've got to think that there are some. I would support looking into fire and open space related research grants for a city project of this scope and scale. And I would definitely have to look at what the impacts this system would have on the environment and costs.
Sue.
Yeah, on the fire mitigation, fire safety report, we have a helipad up there now on the fire road, and we've been partnering with the Laguna Beach County Water District. They're going to be adding another one on their dime at Zitnik, and they're going to have, that's in design. The second one will be at Ridge, so we'll have 3 in total. So these projects were put into their capital improvement projects budgets at our request. But as far as what you've asked in the question, we would need a couple things. 1, support from the fire department. 2, it had to be environmentally sensitive. 3, would require a huge source of outside money. And we say like $1 million a mile for pipe. But the other thing is you also have to build reservoirs. You have to build pump stations. We do have in the wildland interface, we do have hydrants out there with the kind of pressure we need. So it's a complicated thing. I think we should look more to technologies and probably do a project like that, but I'm open to discussion.
And Ruben.
I definitely would support it. We know that there's 2 or 3 residences who were required to put in cannons behind their house because they were right up against the hillsides. How can we require them to do that, or whoever required them to do it, and then not do it for ourselves? Number 2, the minute we say something like we've done everything that we can and we're fine, is the minute that we stop looking for possibilities and we stop looking for better answers, newer answers, greater answers. So I'd say, yes, let's go ahead and put that in the forefront, but 2, 3, that we should be looking at what else can we do. There's a concept called firescaping that I've been trying to promote in our town. And firescaping is a way of actually planting that you actually impede the progress of a fire. So there are things we can do, and there are things that we can support. And so it isn't all handled, and there's more that we can do. Thanks.
Thank you. So the next question is question 7, has to do with the restrooms in South Laguna. Beaches of South Laguna are under continuously increasing pressure from visitors. One of the worst problems for visitors and residents alike is the lack of public restrooms in key areas of South Laguna, from West Street to south of the hospital. This is a public health issue for visitors and residents who use our beaches, parks, and businesses. Would you support city action to provide a public restroom in South Laguna? Let's see. First is Mark.
Yes, I would. when I first moved to town, I lived in Treasure Island, so I have some personal experience with this. Fortunately, the office there used to let the public use the restrooms all of the time. But so with the acquisition of the new property for the fire station, I think maybe that might be a location for a public restroom, you know, adjacent somewhere built into that project. I'm not sure what the final use is going to be with the old fire station or currently the existing fire station. So there might be an opportunity there. And I'm not sure what we're going to do with Tiamo, but I'm sure there's a way that we can put one in. And I think that it's definitely necessary. We have to do it.
Thank you. Peter.
The restrooms are going to go where the new fire station is going. That's the perfect place for them. That's why we've chosen this larger location and not chosen the Tiamo to move forward with. I think public restrooms are important for South Laguna, and I think that that's where they're going to end up.
Sue.
Right. I mean, I agree with everyone. We should definitely put them in the fire station. That's going to be very accessible. And if we have to add, you know, some more square footage to the fire station, so be it. You know, we have restrooms in the summer at the hospital, but maybe we need to keep them, you know, more full time. And I'm also open to looking for other opportunities to add more restrooms down there if the community thinks they have a good spot for them. But yeah, I think you'd be out of your mind not to support restrooms in South Laguna or any place else along the beaches. It's just a public health issue. It's really horrible not to have bathrooms. It's inexcusable, really.
Lewis.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I live near the beach. I've lived down in South Laguna. I've lived off Thousand Steps Beach. It's the only one in South County that actually has a flushable bathroom. The county just went through a remodel that actually took away one of the restrooms and put it into an ADA, which why 2 bathrooms into one ADA size restroom, which is below 300 and whatever 48 steps. I don't understand that. But we do have the drainage channels and the sewer lines that are down lower on the beaches. I know we have porta potties being managed by the county down on West Street Beach. So we can look for summertime relief with temporary programs with porta potties, but I don't think that's a long-term solve. I think we need to carefully look at some of the land, look at some of our beach access points, and figure out what are the most convenient or accessible way for the general public and our residents to go to the bathroom. I think it's a human rights element and a health and safety one, but we have Anita Street that's currently a beach access being talked about on Wednesday night, and bathrooms aren't part of that scope. I think that's the problem, that we're not evaluating those when we have been making repairs, and I'd put that to the forefront as we go forward. Doesn't mean every beach can house one, but we should have some.
Ruben. Oh, I'm sorry. Alex.
First off, I agree that there has been a significant increase in the number of day trippers coming to South Laguna beaches. This has been true even in my own lifetime. I think probably over the past 10 to 15 years, I've seen a significant increase. And I don't know if that's because of social media. There's a million different reasons, or the development around us, but certainly there has been an increased pressure from visitors. So for restrooms, I think having a restroom at the new fire station would be a good idea, but I also think we need to better utilize the hospital. The city has a lease for visitors to park there, and we need to do more to get people to park there, because right now they're not doing it. And so whether that's someone holding up a sign, getting more people to park there, and then we could have restrooms there, which would be also an incentive for people to park there and outside of the neighborhoods. Yeah, that's my position. Thank you.
Okay, Ruben, sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, I agree. Obviously, bathrooms need to be put in. I grew up on Huntington Beach, and there was bathrooms all the way up and down the stretch, but we're not that flat beach that it makes it so easy to be done. But we also have the assistance of the county, the beaches where they're supposed to be in charge of. So I agree with Lou. We should probably look at putting some more temporary bathrooms in right away. We shouldn't even be thinking about it. We should just be doing it. 2, is there a possibility to actually buy a little corner of a few different residential parcels, put it out to the general public to see if they're willing to, that would face the canyon, face the highway, and that we could put bathrooms, what would be brand new city property from somebody. We got to look at what's possible, but the hospital is definitely a great location. The new fire station is a great location, but we would need at least 3 or 4 more.
Jerome, and Jerome, if you could get a little closer to the mic, we've had a few people say they couldn't quite hear you well.
Okay, absolutely, I would support it. In fact, this is one of my pet peeves. The question I ask is, why hasn't it been done earlier? I mean, how many years have they not had any facilities? This is craziness. So, and yeah, you know, fire station good, the hospital good, but you know, facing reality and how people actually live, they're going to look for the closest place possible. So we do need more porta potties on down below, and make it easy and accessible.
Thank you. So the next question is question 9, and it kind of relates. And I know there's a potential agenda item coming up about this, so you guys in the know can speak about it. So this is a video question. Responsibility for the beaches in South Laguna is currently split between the City of Laguna Beach and County of Orange. The city has discussed taking complete control of these beaches and recently appeared ready to take action, but the matter has disappeared from the council agendas. South Laguna beaches are officially closed from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., which was much more considerate of the neighbors than the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. closing hours of the beaches in the rest of the city. Do you support the city taking control of South Laguna beaches, and if so, do you support doing so only if the current operating hours are retained? Jerome, you're first.
Am I mic'd up? I guess I am. Yeah, I would definitely support taking control of the beaches. And the question of hours, I think that's going to depend a bit on what the residents are happy with, but I like the earlier hours. I think that they're going to want to have some peace and quiet. Let's see here. Yeah, my idea is that the more control we can have of our own beaches, the better. We can respond quicker and supply the needs of the public. So yes.
Sue, you're next.
Well, this is a very timely question because it's actually on our council agenda tomorrow night. So Bob Whalen and I and Sheree Dupuy and Ken Domer have negotiated a deal with the county, which is going to require council approval. But we would be the deal with the number one priority was to make sure we didn't have to change the hours of the South Laguna beaches, and Coastal Commission Executive Director confirmed that with us. So we'll have basically Aliso, Camel Point, Laguna Royale, Table Rock, 1,000 Steps, and West Street. And so we're tentatively going to get a lump sum payment of $22 million, which will be used to cover the operating costs of those beaches. So I think it's going to be a very, very good thing for us. I'm excited about it to see what the council has to say about it. Hopefully everybody goes for it because we worked pretty hard on this. Bob and I kind of tag team Lisa Bartlett, and she was super helpful. So we'll see what happens tomorrow night.
Ruben. Oh, you're muted, Ruben.
Sue, great job. And obviously Bob as well. South Laguna beaches, I think, are just the cooler beaches. It's just the cliffs are so tall. It's just really, really a cool place when you're down on the sand. And therefore, that's why more people are going to be drawn to them. The negotiation of what the county would have versus what we would have would be the dollar amount. So that's what's going to tell the tale of what we end up doing. How much funds do we have to cover that? If I had the choice between fire and beaches, I think I would go for fire, and then let the county handle the beaches. It all has to do with a master plan, and it has to do with what we're willing to, what negatives we're willing to put up with, and what positives we're willing to go forward with.
Alex?
I strongly support the acquisition of the South Laguna beaches for the city. And I think that, like Ruben said, the mayor and the mayor pro tem, and the city manager did a great job in moving this forward. And I'm hoping that the council supports it tomorrow night. I think there are many reasons to support this. The first is local control, making it easier so that when you have a complaint at the beach, you know who to call. You call the city. You don't have to go through a bureaucratic maze of different agencies, which is just never what we want. So that's good. And then I think it's also very important when it comes to safety, because nobody is better than the Laguna Beach lifeguards. Right now, the county has a contractor, and they're good, and we love all the work that they do, but nobody's better than the Laguna Beach lifeguards. So the ability to have our own Laguna Beach lifeguards patrolling the South Laguna beaches is something that I very much support. On the question of the hours, I don't think that we would be able to change the hours without going to the Coastal Commission or doing a new EIR. So I think I'm supportive of keeping the hours as they are, but I'm very excited about the opportunity that this presents, and grateful for the city's leader.
All right, I shut you off. Cut you off, Alex. Mark, you're next.
Yeah, I would support the taking control of the beaches. Again, it's, it comes to priority and budgeting, unfortunately, and I don't want to make any false promises here. I am, interested, and maybe we'll find out tomorrow why the county didn't honor their commitment when we went into the sharing agreement with them. I would also have questions with ambulatory issues. I saw in the video you had some helicopters. I'd be interested to know if how we're going to handle those expenses if there are injuries down on the beach and we're in control of them. So I had a lot of questions. I'm going to pay attention to tomorrow night's meeting, and we'll see what we learn from there.
Peter.
Given that some people have the district attorney's phone number on speed dial every time I do something wrong while they try to save their own backs, I can't answer that question given it's coming up tomorrow night on a council meeting.
Fair enough. Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, I think South Laguna is unique because, at one point in time before the Coastal Commission came around, I believe some of those beaches were private beaches. So I think these operating hours were originally established with the agreement of making the public access. So as long as the Coastal Commission's good with those hours, I mean, that's my starting point for where we go, because at night, these beaches, there's rocks, there's things, there's emergencies, there's people that have died down in these beaches at night because of the tides and stuff. So there's a safety element that should be in play, hopefully for the Coastal Commission. But I think it is part of the bigger conversation of, do we maintain local control? It's something I'm supportive of, but we do need to, comprehensively find out how we pay for these amenities and get the right, benefits from the county to take care of some of the things they've unmaintained for so long, whether it's the beach access staircases that need improvements or the public bathrooms that we were just talking about. How do we get that right negotiated value?
Thank you. So the next question is question 10, and this has to do with the estuary. A window of opportunity for a singular legacy project may soon close if the city does not act. The estuary at Aliso Creek is currently a poster child for an abused ecosystem. The project to restore the estuary will create a healthy and diverse habitat that links the green belt and the blue belt and be a showcase for Laguna's southern gateway. Over 2 years ago, the City Council expressed strong support for the project and committed to co-fund development of the project site plan and environmental review. The city also expressed the desire to see the restoration proceed as soon as possible, but the city has not yet fulfilled its commitment with funding and staff time to assume the role of lead agency. What specific steps would you take to ensure the public and co-funders that the city is making good on its commitment? Alex, you're up first on this one.
So I believe that this is Estuary Week. So happy Estuary Week from September 17th through the 24th. So I'll start with that. But I'm very supportive of this project. It's been something that we've been talking about for decades, but just has not really moved forward. And I don't think it will if the city doesn't step up and take the lead. So at the minimum, the city needs to be the lead agency in the CEQA process. And if I'm on the council, I'm committed to doing that. But we have to do so much more. We need to bring all the stakeholders to the table, whether it's the county, the state, the Army Corps of Engineers potentially, and of course the Laguna Ocean Foundation at El Monza, who've been really shown tremendous leadership on this project. I think this is an amazing opportunity that we could turn 14 acres into a beautiful estuary, which would be not only good for our natural environment, but also a very scenic and cool thing to see. So I'm excited about this. If I'm on the council, I'm going to take the initiative to move this forward, and so we can stop talking about it. We can make this happen. Thank you.
Jerome?
Again, it's another one of these questions of why hasn't this already happened? I mean, I reel sometimes at the way that South Laguna is treated. It's just mistreated continually. Yeah, I would assume that we would have to start working with other agencies to twist their arm. I would certainly be banging on the door at City Hall and twisting arms down there, putting pressure on the city council to act. I also think that, if it takes it, maybe a public shaming campaign would have to be instituted, but get the residents involved and make a ruckus, make a row, get your rights.
Lewis?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a huge desire across the community for protecting our, ocean and our ecosystems that are along our coast. This project's been on a shelf for a long time. The council made a resolution, I think it was 5, 8, 10, I can't remember how many years ago, but I support the resolution that they were committed to for restoring this ecosystem. And I'd put this back on the priority desk of how we, involve this into the overall improvement in infrastructure and restoration across South Laguna. It's just another one that we need to get on the list of checking off and bringing the right parties to the table to work with them to get their alignment as well.
Mark?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of it, definitely. And it's another one of those examples where if we proceeded with the plan, and even if we couldn't fund it right away, we could be ready if there were funds available for shovel-ready projects. I would also like to explore the possibility of seeing if the intersection, Aliso Beach intersection, and the entrance to the ranch could be folded into this, at least just as a to see if it would work as far as the roadway. It's a dangerous intersection. I think it would be worth examining at the same time.
Peter?
I would be supportive of this project. When a good plan comes to council, I'll vote for it.
Ruben?
I'd be a huge proponent of this particular project. We just mentioned the ranch, and I worked on the rock house for about 3 years. We actually took the plants off the top of the rock, housed them over in the water area, kept them alive, brought them back to the rock house after it was built, and then replanted them, and had a 95% take on those natives that were on top of that rock. But it also stunk like crazy working there because of the stagnant water in that area. So if we could make that just this beautiful enclave around this estuary, that we could actually redo that road that goes to the ranch and make that another beautiful place. The bird life, the wildlife. There was photos of a deer on the beach, on Aliso Beach yesterday. And we don't know what kind of incredible wildlife and incredible beauty we can start to be fathers to, and it would be great.
And Sue?
Yeah, I think Bob Whalen met last year. There was a meeting in April of 2021. The reason it hasn't happened is because not all the other agencies are on board. So they're not on board with a conceptual plan. So I think what needs to happen is we need to get all the agencies together and just kind of flesh out once again, and kind of get the project restarted and what their issues are, so we can all agree on a conceptual plan. It's going to be a costly plan. There's no question about it. And there's also all kinds of, we're going to have the parking lot, but there's all kinds of utilities and stuff. There's water and sewer and power lines underneath that parking lot. So it's a complex plan. It's going to need a lot of detailing. And I don't think we're going to get all the different agencies on board until we can all agree what the plan is, what the costs are, what the scope is going to be. But I support it. And I've had several conversations with Ed Almanza about it. So it just needs some more work.
Okay. So the next question is question 12. And this has to do with the purchases of the lot near the Village Green. South of Aliso Creek, we have only one small intentionally used city-owned park called the Village Green. Repairs are needed to the play equipment and the park's condition has been compromised by overuse. There are conflicts between playing children and exercising dogs. We have an opportunity to expand the Village Green by acquiring the two empty, relatively flat lots diagonally across the street, which would make it possible to provide sufficient room and facilities for both children and dogs. Would you support the purchase of those lots as additional park space before it is too late? Sue, you're up first.
I think that, so we have to look at this in the context of our entire budget, because we're making some pretty big capital purchases. We're in particular, we're buying the dentist building, the dentist lot down there for the fire station. We're also purchasing St. Catherine's. So when we talk about acquisitions of more property, we have to look at it in terms of our entire budget, because, borrowing money to buy land is okay as long as we can service the debt. But if we keep buying and buying more property and we have our debt, that's going to hit our general fund and our debt servicing. So we have to be careful and thoughtful about that. I'm never against acquiring more property, but we have to do it kind of in the context of our overall budget and our financial health.
Ruben?
It was a joy to walk across the corner from the park to the potential park, and to think of how, again, we can service the people of South Laguna who have not been serviced very well. Putting a pavement change from corner to corner would slow the traffic, would just that visual impairment in the pavement itself would cause people to know that there's something else going on in this area. Making that, it's a beautiful view right now through that area. So go ahead and capture that view in the view preservation codes, and let's get that to happen. It would be again, there hasn't been a new park in Laguna Beach in decades. So why not expand the Village Green and get that other portion, put a restroom there, and let's service the people of South Laguna.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of it. I also agree with Sue. We do have to pay attention to the budget and what it is that we can actually, afford to do. However, I do think that there's a bit of catching up to do in South Laguna. So I think as we have our, assemble our list in our strategic plan, I think that South Laguna deserves priority on some of these projects. So in short, I'm in favor of it, and I think they deserve some priority. South Laguna, that is.
Peter?
It's a terrible place for a park. My colleagues have already spent $100 million in the last half hour, so it's not worth buying. I wouldn't buy that for a park. I wouldn't put kids right there on the street.
Lewis?
Yeah, I mean, in looking at the recent lots, there's 3 right there on Coast Highway that recently sold in 2001. About all of them sold for about $1 million, which was oddly enough, about $250,000 over the asking price of the 2 listed. So I don't know what's going on in play or what the potential landowners wish to do with it. I do support generally looking at how do we create more pocket parks throughout town and give some more reach in different neighborhoods and different areas. I am challenged that it is, as being a father, to have a playground right on Coast Highway, it's challenging. The closest playground to my house is Main Beach, and we don't go down there a ton because it's too much to control with all the traffic and the police or not the police, the traffic and the congestion and all the other stuff going on. So with right now in our capital improvement budget, we've got 1.5 or 1.3 slated over the next 3 years for park improvements. I want to make sure we're putting that in the place where a lot of our community goes, because most of our kids go to Bluebird Park after school for the Boys and Girls programs. The Boys and Girls programs are getting investments in the canyon, and other areas need those funds at the moment. So balance it. And
Sorry, Lewis. We cut you off. Jerome?
Yeah, I would support the purchase. I would like to see a formal appraisal on the property and getting zoning review to see how the space can be used. But also want to talk with the residents and find out how they feel about using it as a park. Once again, it's a case of why aren't we going to the residents and talking to the residents and getting their feedback before we decide for them? You know, it's like City Hall wonders why it gets pushed back when it doesn't go to the residents first. So yeah, I'm all for it. Go for it.
And Alex.
I was lucky enough to spend my childhood at Village Green Park, and that was my bus stop, and I spent countless hours there. And on the tour, we talked about the fact that that was actually going to be developed into a house, and Ann Kristoff led the way to get the county to buy it for, at the time, it was $50,000, which now it sounds like a steal, but back then it was a lot of money. So I'm always in favor of looking at how we can acquire more parks. I think we need to look at the Village Green Park in particular. There's some small improvements that could be made there. A lot of the equipment is broken and that needs to be fixed, and it could be fixed for at an inexpensive rate. But yeah, I'm in favor of buying more parks. We're never going to regret buying another park. I'd like to see a parks master plan where we look at what are the community needs as it relates to parks. We start there, then we look at the existing parks. How can we make those better to meet those community needs? And then third, how can we acquire more parks to meet those community needs? So I'd like to be looking at a more broader level of our strategy as it relates to parks, but we're never going to regret buying a park. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is question 14, and my son's going to be talking.
The South Laguna Community Garden Park is an asset not just to South Laguna, but to the entire city. We are committed to making the garden a permanent part of our community. Do you support having the city fund the acquisition of the garden? What steps would you take to make the acquisition happen?
Lewis, you're up first on this one.
Yes, I mean, this kind of piggybacks from the last question, right? Currently, I believe the asking price from the property owner is about $5 million. I mean, that's significantly above market rate and those and comps for the area. I think we have to look overall, what's the best improvement? I know there's a lot of community pride and utilization of a vacant lot right now, and the council's committed about 500,000 to see that go forward. I'm supportive of that if things occur in the more current time, but it's a matter of weighing the cost and the benefits of where we spend dollars overall within the community. There's lots of needs. The Canyon has park needs, the Alta Laguna, Molten Meadows, and we can continue to do more parks, but we just have to make sure it's the right fit.
Alex, you're next.
I'm supportive of the council's effort to allocate $500,000 for this park, and I'm really hopeful that the price goes down, and because 5 million is way too expensive. I also think if I'm on the council, I would be active in trying to pursue funding from other levels of government, like the county, the state, even the federal government. There's a lot of grants out there that are looking at community gardens, and I think that if the city was behind it, the city could help leverage those funds. So as of right now, I'm supportive of the $500,000. I'm supportive of a public-private partnership, and I'm hopeful that we can get the funding that's required to make to keep the community garden what it is. Thank you.
Peter?
I was very hesitant, but voted for the city to supply the last 500,000 in this purchase agreement. So if the garden raises enough money to buy that property, whatever it costs, I will agree to pay $500,000 towards the last payment for that. But as far as I'm concerned, that property isn't worth $5 million, and having a garden on PCH on what used to be a dry cleaner is probably one of the most idiotic things I've ever heard. I'm sorry, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Mark?
Yeah, I support the garden. Again, it's about prioritizing. So if the community in South Laguna is in favor of making the garden its first priority, understanding that the price needs to be negotiated significantly. I do believe that the price is completely out of line. But again, if the community thinks that that is a top priority, and if it's ready to go, I would support it as long as it could be negotiated down to market value. I would support the city kicking in maybe another, 500,000 to make it happen.
Jerome.
I'm probably a little bit more enthusiastic about it. I would kick in yet even another million. I'd want to get obviously a partnership share, some skin in the game from the community. The place is special, it's magic. And there isn't really, to my knowledge, anything else like it in the county. What's really special and nice about it is it's you got to look at it as being more like a park as opposed to a garden. It's a nice place where people can get together and share a common bond, if you will. So I'm very enthusiastic about it. I think it's just, it's just, like I said, it's magic.
Sue?
Yeah, I like the garden, but I'm on the council. We voted unanimously to put $500,000 aside for the purchase of a garden, and that's a lot. That's a lot more money than that was asked before. That's a huge number, and when you're on the council, you have to consider the town as a whole, and you have to really look carefully at your expenditures, and that's just too much money to pay for that site, even though we like it, and I know South Laguna likes it. Right now, it's not something that I think we can buy at this point.
And Ruben.
I think what you want to do is you want to encourage people who invest their lives in a part of a land that has yet to be deemed theirs. The social conscience of people that are in South Laguna is huge, and the amount of time that they spend on making their streets beautiful, making their parks beautiful, it's unbelievable. And to not commend them for doing that, I don't see that equality in North Laguna. And not that I'm trying to pit one area against the other, but we want to encourage people and to support people that do that. Regarding our whole life now is about reuse. So to think that it was a dry cleaners and how horrible that is just beyond. I mean, we're drinking water that's been recleaned. We're talking about purple pipe water for the landscape. Our whole lives are going to be about reuse. So that this is going to be a reuse garden, so be it. I think it's beautiful, and it's such an addition to the community. I would look to see where we can put one just like it in North.
Sorry, Ruben. I know you're motivated on this. Okay. The next question is a video question. And it's number 17, has to do with the general plan's housing element.
Hello again. My second question pertains to the general plan's housing element. In a recent revision to the general plan's housing element, the city designated a steep, undeveloped parcel uphill from the South Coast Hospital as a site for future high-density housing for low and moderate income residents. Most of the site contains high-value native habitat and is in a very high fire hazard severity zone on the edge of the Greenbelt. While we support the city in meeting its affordable housing obligations, we believe that this parcel specifically should not be developed at all and should be acquired as permanent open space. What is your opinion on the designation of this parcel for affordable housing, and how do you think the city should adjust the provision of affordable housing and where it should be? Thank you.
First up on this is Peter.
I love the idea of that site being for housing. As far as the high value native habitat, I value people over plants. So I'm all for building housing back there. And if it's such a high fire risk zone, then why do we have a hospital there? In reality, it's a really great place. And, every time the housing people come out and bring another site to us, there's going to be a group of people that don't want it in their backyard. And so we have to start getting over that and start moving forward. The hospital itself needs to be reimagined. We have a hospital that's become the psych ward and the OD center for neighboring communities. Unbeknownst to us, it's a disaster over there. So we need to reimagine our entire hospital. Frankly, if we closed the hospital, I'd be more than happy. If we turned it into a housing for our elders, that would be a great use. And if we put more housing behind it, all the better.
Lewis?
Yeah, so when I was on the Affordable Housing Task Force, this was an identified site because of size, location, and availability to services, whether it's hotel or restaurants, stores, and public transit. So it checks a lot of the boxes from the state level. I think it still comes down to the overall desires of the property owner, whether they come forward to do something or not. And I think you weigh those choices as it comes forward, just like I do on design review, whether something's a right fit or not. But I do know the hospital site is probably challenged given state regulations heading towards 2030 for earthquake retrofit. So are there opportunities on the existing developed site or not? Where things evolve, I don't know. There's not a proposal in front of me, but I do have to keep an open mind of what may be possible and what may be the needs of the future, especially when it comes to hospital workers or service workers and that kind of stuff, or senior housing connected to a hospital. Those are hard things to weigh. And if an application's in front of me, that's when I'll make that decision.
Sue?
I think you have a budding council member and your daughter there, James. But I don't support the hillside parcel for affordable housing. I don't think that's a good site. I don't think it's appropriate. It is a difficult, problem because it's a community largely built out. So we talked as a council about adding some more housing back behind Lang Park behind the tennis courts there. I think that's a good spot because it's near shopping and it's near transit. I also think we should be doing adaptive reuse both in the canyon and other places in town where we already have buildings that may be suited for housing that used to be something else and no longer needed, or maybe we can just change the use or change the zoning to allow for housing there. I think we have to be a little creative. Maybe some of the nonprofits could offer up some of their, property, but it's a hard problem to tackle. I think we can do it, but we're just going to have to be very thoughtful about how we approach it.
Jerome? You're muted, Jerome. Sorry.
Humbug. I would probably oppose it. It's in the fire and environmental hazard area. It is not really walkable to a lot of the amenities that affordable housing may require, especially if you're dealing with the elderly. There are better housing solutions. There are ADUs. I talk about permitting illegal units to come forward without penalties and without tax increases. There are infill capabilities within the community. And when it's feasible, convert commercial properties into residences.
Ruben?
I'm completely against using that dry area above the hospital. It was a guaranteed green space forever for a client of mine on Mar Vista, and now it may not be. Not to mention that it's every time you encroach on a hillside, then you blame the hillside for being dry. Like, leave the hillside alone. There's a what is a fire road, and so that's the reason that road is even there. But if you go into the hospital, as you go from the signal, which is a great area because it's already mapped out, come in all on the right-hand side of the drive as you go into the hospital. You could do lower parking. You could do maybe even 2 levels of lower parking and then some housing on top of it. It's already tiered, but you could go probably 3 stories and not affect anybody's view and not affect anybody else in the hospital because all it is parking behind. So there's so much potential for what we already have before we start encroaching on an area that's a natural area. Let's not do that.
Alex?
I think the important thing here is that the hospital has no plans to develop this site for affordable housing. The only reason why this site is in the housing element is because the city was looking for sites that were institutionally zoned, which technically allows housing. To me, I've said this for the past year, that doesn't meet the requirements of the state HCD because the state HCD wants us to actually find sites where housing is feasible to happen. This site isn't one of them. So I don't think this site would ever happen, and I don't think it should ever happen. I would rather use the housing element process to find sites where housing could happen and where upzoning could happen for adaptive reuse for second store commercial along Coast Highway, maybe adaptive reuse of the hospital itself. But what's important to recognize is that our housing element is still out of compliance because the approach that we've taken is not consistent with what the state is expecting of us. And if I'm on the council, I'm committed to having a housing element that really finds real housing sites to address the needs of our community and to be in compliance with state law.
Mark.
Yeah, I'm not certain if this particular site is suitable for housing, especially high density. I would hope that the community could work together to really be open to allowing some housing in their neighborhoods. I'm a fan of medium density to low density, so I'd like to spread things out around Laguna a bit. As far as the hospital site in general, there might be some other options and some other opportunities for housing in and around that property when it's available or if it's available. But no matter what happens to the hospital, I would insist that we keep the emergency room facilities. I just cannot imagine our nearest emergency room being up in Mission Viejo.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is number 20, and it has to do with South Coast Water District. All of South Laguna is within the service area of the South Coast Water District, our water and sewer service provider. Until 1999, the residents of South Laguna could vote for South Coast Water District's Board of Directors. Then the City Council and SCWD agreed without consultation of the voters to shift the voting boundary, but not the service boundary of the district southward to the edge of Dana Point, thus taking away our right to vote for the board. Since we remain in the South Coast Water District service area and collectively shoulder expenses for its project, i.e. the sewage tunnel project, the proposed Doheny desal plant, we believe that we should be able to vote for the members of the SCWD's board. The city has publicly agreed to reinstate our right to vote and must initiate the process, but nothing has happened. Would you act to have the city take a leadership role in restoring our right to vote? Mark, you're first on this one.
Sounds like taxation without representation to me. So I would say that it should be addressed immediately. I don't know the details as to why it hasn't been addressed, but I think it needs to be a conversation as soon as possible.
Peter?
I would allow LAFCO to bring this to the table and then vote on it. But until then, I'm not going out of my way to make it happen.
Sue?
I support it, but what we have going now is LAFCO started this process called the Municipal Service Review, the MSR for South County, and they're looking at how water and sewer is provided to our city now. So our preference is to have LAFCO to include this matter in their process instead of the city pursuing an application on its own. So LAFCO Executive Director is agreeing to do that, which is good. And so we're working on the MSR process with the LAFCO consultant.
Lewis?
Yeah, just like the others have stated, it should be something that the community has representation. They pay for the fees, they pay for those things. They should have an elected official that represents them for the interest of where that goes. Obviously, we've talked about infrastructure problems with the water district down there, and you should have that representation. And yeah, I'm supportive of it.
Alex?
I'm supportive.
I like the brevity. Ruben?
Same, I'm supportive as well.
And Jerome? You're muted, Jerome.
Absolutely. I'd lobby fellow council members if they were elected to push for full reinstatement, as well as the water district. If you're paying for services, then you should be heard.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is question 8. Has to do with the beach patrol. The officers of the beach patrol were originally intended to provide additional surveillance of beaches, but the beach patrol officers were replaced by park rangers whose scope of work has gradually widened. with a consequent reduction in the amount of time they are patrolling on the sand. This has significant consequences for South Laguna's overcrowded beaches. What would you do to restore and possibly increase the time and attention the park rangers devote to patrolling South Laguna's remote beaches and coves? Jerome, you're first on this. And unmute.
Natural. Since this is a county-owned beach, I would see if we could get some funds, get them to start, demand that they start actually patrolling it with us. And if not, provide funds for our city to hire more rangers. We got 2.5 miles of shoreline to patrol. I think we need a few people. Good God, I'm wondering how many tourists that we have, visitors, day visitors we have. Adding a closed circuit surveillance monitors could be that could be accessed from the police station and from the mobile units. Could expand oversight and speed reaction times.
Thank you. Sue?
Yeah, so I mentioned this is going to be on our council agenda tomorrow night, but so we'll have our full complement of park rangers, 5 full-time and 5 part-time. Then we have one sergeant and 2 corporals. And that in combination with us taking over the beaches in South Laguna, where it's approved by the council tomorrow night, the lifeguards can also tamp down a lot of this bad behavior. Also, we won't allow smoking on that beach anymore. Smoking is allowed on county beaches. So I think overall, and I would like to have either at St. Catharines or at the new fire station. I'd like to have new fire station, like to have a substation there for the park rangers so they could access quickly. But I think, you know, control of this South Laguna beaches is going to be critical. And I think we can do a very good job with our plans that we have both in place and what we plan to do to make the beaches a lot more safer and a lot better for the residents down there.
Ruben?
Well, it sounds like Sue has it all tied up. So good job, Sue. We want to ask, why was there a subsequent reduction in the amount of time that was allocated to the patrol list? So did they somehow assess that there wasn't a need? And as Sue also mentioned, people that have come to these beaches and those that are smokers, that's going to take even more vigilance in the first year or two to mandate that no smoking. So I think it's something that we're going to have to really take a look at, find out what's the best way of managing that, policing that. I agree that we need to have a substation down south, like we have our lifeguard station in the main beach, so that we can manage it from that location. Again, we need to bring more infrastructure to South Laguna.
Alex?
Like the mayor mentioned, this is a great example of how taking over the beaches from the county is a great idea, because we'll be able to have our Laguna Beach lifeguards better coordinate with these park rangers to more effectively target when and where are the spots with the highest need for more enforcement. So I'm excited about that. I also agree with the need for a police substation in South Laguna. And I think I know our police chief is a big supporter of data-driven policing, and that's how we can more strategically allocate our police resources to address the highest needs and address quality of life and public safety concerns.
Mark?
Yeah, safety is always a concern, right? So I like the idea, again, having control over the beaches. I am curious, however, again, as I stated before, of why the county hadn't honored its commitment. That just makes, I'm just a bit curious about that. I do like Sue's idea of the substation down at the new fire station. And I think it looks like council has this pretty much covered. So we'll see what happens tomorrow night.
Peter?
I can't discuss the item that's coming up in a council meeting tomorrow, but I will say this, that I'm known for hiring as many officers as we need to keep people safe. I am the law and order candidate.
Lewis?
Yeah, so every year I spend a long weekend down on 1,000 Steps, and I've been doing that for about the last 10 or 11 years. And I've noticed that obviously there's been much, over that time, there was no patrol. And of recent years, there's been patrol every night. So I think from the county's point, they've stepped it up, but I think we've recognized that even the county doing it isn't enough, right? It's not the service levels that we require from the community. We need to bring these beaches back in-house and get the control locally so we can have the better response times and the better connectivity, because the topography really is challenged down there. It's, kind of like Moss Street. It's difficult to get down there and it's got a lot of challenges and a lot of risk, but I believe we can do it better in town, and I'm supportive of a police substation downtown. It's probably part of our question of Tiamo and how that site comes into play, but we got to look holistically at some acquisitions and where the biggest bang for the buck and the highest utility really drives that benefit. So supportive.
Okay, thank you. The next question is question 11, has to do with the berm. And this is a video question.
The sand berm at the mouth of Aliso Creek is often breached by skimboarders and others, and every breach dumps millions of gallons of untreated urban runoff directly into our marine protected area. The city has supported actions to improve education and monitoring of the berm, but this has not solved the problem. We think that the city should direct the police, who currently patrol and issue tickets in the adjacent parking lot, to cite people for the breaching of the berm. Would you support strong city enforcement at the berm?
Alex, you're first on this one.
Yeah, I support enforcement at the berm. It should not be the first option, but it should be a tool in the arsenal to ensure that the berm is not breached. I think what's also important about when people breach the berm, what they do is they disconnect the beach from each other. So people aren't able to walk across that area, which is an access issue. I've been walking it with my grandma and she's not able to cross it because the berm is breached. So I'm not in support of allowing that to just happen. Of the question of whether it's the police or whether it's the OC sheriffs under the current jurisdiction who can actually has the power to enforce that, I don't know. But I'm generally in favor of enforcement happening, but it not being, we start with education, but we have enforcement as a tool in our arsenal. Thank you.
Jerome? You're muted, Jerome. Sorry.
So easy to forget. I would start by educating the locals and the public with more highly visible signage and awareness literature at the Little Park, the Lost Pier Restaurant, the ticket kiosk, on the trash cans, and at the lifeguard tower. I'd even consider doing an education program at the local schools that could help raise awareness among the younger set. And yeah, a bit of a citation or occasionally would maybe enough to alert people that they shouldn't be bursting the berm. Would make it an all-time habit, but yes. And going back, since I didn't get a chance shot at it, I too would be in favor of a local police satellite station there in South Laguna, very much so.
Lewis?
Yeah, so I mean, the berm, I think you have to kind of take things in context of what's the public behavior and how can you mitigate it or minimize it, whether it's education or how do you make the berm so it's less playful to damage it or whatnot. I think access is kind of one of the bigger challenges. I think as we look at the sidewalks and how we incorporate getting to there, whether the tunnel is the right approach or if we need another staircase or sidewalk on that side of the street for the bridge. I think we need to look comprehensively, especially as we've talked across multiple issues tonight, but I'm not supportive that, or I am supportive that we do have education and enforcement to a point, but they are the beaches and we do need to have public access to them. And that means sometimes things don't quite go our way or the right way. So education first, and then, figure out how we can solve that barrier of damaging that ecosystem. I also think we should look proactively upstream for the environmental impacts that flow down and create some of the sludge or discharge as well.
Mark?
Yeah, I would support that citation. As a last resort, though, I think education is the first route that we should go. If I remember correctly, we did something similar to this in the tide pools years ago. So I think that we should look into what it is that we did there. And I do think some better signage. I do go there quite often, actually, and I do see children in that water, and it is very troubling So I'm sure that we can do something between signage and some education before we jump into citation.
Peter?
So we're going to give citations out now. We've got people on the beach that are doing meth in public, and we're going to give citations to people boogie boarding. How about we put some education out there and we stop the kids from boogie boarding and take care of the environment? But the thought of having cops go out and issue tickets when we've got people walking up and down the beach doing lewd things and everything else that we've got going on, I seriously doubt we're going to be giving out tickets for
Ruben?
Yeah, I don't really want tickets, but it wouldn't hurt if they were to just mention, speak, say something to them. If it's amazing how all these conversations actually one can support the other and support the other. If we get this estuary happening and people understand the beauty and the grace and the wonder of an estuary coming down to the ocean, and then have a sign that says deer crossing, there's an uplifting respect that people would have for that area. And so I think it's about education. And like Mark mentioned, I jogged Main Beach, and there's definitely the tide pools there, and there's a docent explaining to all the kids about how valuable and how precious that area is. And we could do the same thing with the estuary. So I think it would be a great thing for education.
Okay, the next question is question 15, has to do with the existing fire station. The city plans to replace the existing fire station with a new building on another site. The city will need to decide the fate of the current building and the land on which it sits. Do you support the city's retaining the existing property and converting it to another community serving use? Sue, you're first.
Sorry, I was gonna answer the berm question.
You're muted.
Jerome should have told me that. Sorry, Sue, if I cut you out of the berm, I crossed you off.
That's okay. I
Answer
mean,
the berm question. Go ahead.
Usually I'd be okay to skip over that, but I just want to say something. The county doesn't care about the berm. They don't. And it's another good reason for us to take over the beaches. Like Alex mentioned, there's that gap. I go down to that Lost Pier. They're doing that stuff all the time. It annoys me. And I put in the budget the last 2 years for monitoring the berm. We passed that. I don't like that they're doing that. But if we have our own lifeguards there, our own lifeguards, while we all love them and they're very nice, they're also firm. And so they can talk to these kids that are breaching the berm, and I think they can talk them out of it through education. And also we'll have our neighborhood enforcement team. They'll be down on those beaches and they can talk to these people as well. I think we can cure the problem with our lifeguards, to be honest with you, but I don't like breaching of the berm.
Okay, so in regard to the fire station, Sue, you're up first. So what do you want to do with the existing building?
Well, I think the current thinking, I think, is that we're going to sell that to pay for the building of the new fire station, because we're going to need money to do that. I personally think if you want to have a community space, when we talk about St. Catharines, we should be looking at that St. Catharines is in South Laguna. It's going to be a big facility. It's going to have a lot of opportunity there. So I think instead of having these little centers all over the place, I think we should look to make the best community center we can. I think that's probably St. Catharines. That's my personal opinion.
Ruben?
I think it should be left in the hands of the people of South Laguna. There aren't enough facilities for people in South Laguna. And yes, St. Catharines is going to be incredible, but everybody wants their hands inside of St. Catharines right now. And so there's 150 different nonprofit organizations that all think that they're going to get an auditorium in there. So let's leave this alone. We're obviously not paying much on it anymore. And it once was a community center for South Laguna. Why not let it be that again? And then figure out a way that it can maybe make money for South Laguna, for the city overall. So portion it off, rent some spaces out, make some money from it, make it a great place.
Mark?
I would be open to having the community down there consider it and come back to council with a recommendation as far as, again, a list that's prioritized. And just see where it ends up, where it fits into the budget. Again, it's about priority and budget, right? The two have to align. So I would let the community talk about it and come to council with their ideas.
Peter?
It's a really stupid building for a community center. There's no parking in that area, and the building itself isn't suitable for it. As far as I'm concerned, we're selling the building and using the money to build the new fire station that goes up.
Lewis?
Yeah, so I mean, I think like it needs to be part of this site needs to be part of the overall comprehensive approach that we take towards South Laguna. There's lots of acquisitions going on, so we need to figure out what's the highest and best use for the community. Anytime the city owns property in perpetuity, there can be public benefit. So to determine that we've solved all our needs at St. Catherine's, or that our fire needs are fully solved, or our police needs are fully solved at this point, I don't think as a community we've had those full discussions. And so I'm not necessarily prepared to sell that building yet, but it should be part of that public process of finding out that highest and best use. I mean, even tonight we've had lots of topics of whether a garden or a park or those kind of things should be in play. I mean, maybe this is a better site for some of those things. I don't have that answer today, but I will take a open mind and a forward-thinking approach that this could have utility for the community.
Jerome?
I finally figured it out. Upper right-hand corner mute button. There's lots to unpack on this one. I would certainly consider retaining it, but I think we need to take a hard look at what it would cost to convert it to a new use. Plus, there's concern about bringing it up to current earthquake standards. We'll have 4 or 5 years to consider uses, including a satellite police station, a marine safety lifeguard use, a restroom facility, and other options. And that's all before we break ground, again, about 4 or 5 years out. Again, I keep saying, this should be a community decision. We should be asking the community what the community wants. They may prefer to sell it and use the funds for different purposes, such as a garden or even another civic center. So leave it, put it in the community's hands, ask them, get their answers.
Alex?
In theory, I like the idea of a community room here where people could take classes that they would at Suzy Q. So people could in South Laguna could just walk there. But I'm not really prepared to make the decision without, I think the city needs a 5-year strategic financial plan so we can look at these long-term projects and assess how much money we're going to have over that 5-year long-term period. And then how are we going to prioritize the projects? Because right now on just the current, the 1-year budget cycle that we're on, it's hard to make those decisions about what's the highest and best use over a long period of time. So I think this is a good example of why we need to move towards a 5-year strategic plan with performance outcomes to assess how we're moving towards the vision of our city.
Thank you. So the next question is question 19. In 2017, the owners of Ruby's Restaurant, without the required permits, removed a row of mature trees that were part of the design review approved landscape plan. The property owner is legally obligated to replace the trees, and the city is legally obligated to see that he does so. Nonetheless, despite repeated requests for action, no trees have been replanted. What measures would you take to get those trees replanted and to ensure that code requirements are enforced? Lewis, you're first.
So this one's a little tough one for me because I was actually part of the last body that heard this item. The host muted me. So I unmuted and got muted again. So I don't know which, let me start over. So I was part of the last body that heard this item. It was last heard on the design review board in 2020. The property owner did come forward with plans for planting, and we provided them direction and continued the item. Obviously, the restaurant space has had lots of challenges within COVID and that kind of stuff, but I would look to the code enforcement and community development to try to bring that back so we can get trees planted and get moving on that site. The challenges with the trees half of them, or one of them fell, and some of them became unsafe for the property owner. The trees were determined to be on private property. And I do believe that someone has the ability, if it's a private property tree and it's not a heritage tree, that they have the ability to make their own choices for what's safe for them or their use. And so I look forward to that coming back. I can't make a determination on that planting at this time.
Peter?
If the trees are unsafe and they're on private property, the property owner has the right to remove them. If he's in code enforcement and he has issues, then we as a city have a right to enforce it. It's one of those situations, amongst us, we have someone who's under code enforcement now for probably 20 years, and his case has been turned over to the district or to our city attorney for criminal prosecution because he can't seem to adhere to code. That person would be Ruben Flores, who's running and probably supporting the trees being put back in place. So maybe Ruben can answer the question about how do we get somebody who's in code enforcement having issues with it to actually comply.
Sue?
Yeah, they've been in code enforcement. I think the case was filed in 2017, and then they had some back and forth with DRB. And so in August, I think we noticed the applicant didn't move forward. And so we sent a notice of violation to them. And then upon receipt of that, I guess the trustee for the property died and they signed another trustee. But they requested an extension until October 3rd. The 31st, but I think we made them come forward by September 30th of this month. So more to come on that. We'll see what happens.
Jerome?
Well, it says here that the plan was approved. They know that they need to do the work. If that's the case, and I would say pass a resolution and start fining them and just, escalate the fines over time.
Ruben?
Yes, I think they should replant the trees. They were sound trees. I went and took pictures of the trunks after they were cut down. And you can understand that they might need to take some time to put them in, but how many years has it been since those trees were chopped down? Quite a long time. So yeah, I think that it's up to the city to enforce that the trees get replanted.
Alex?
I'm always about the rule of law, and whatever the rules are, they should be enforced and complied with. As a city council member, my job would be to look at the high level policies for the city, look at the budget, look at the city manager. But this sounds like a code enforcement issue, and I'm hoping that it's resolved in a way that fulfills the legal requirements.
Mark?
This is very simple. It's just simply code enforcement, and they should just proceed with the actions needed to enforce it.
Okay, the next question is question 21. And I think what I'm going to do, I glossed over the ability to give you guys opening statements. So this is going to be our last question, and then I'm going to let you guys do a closing statement if that's okay. So the city is having trouble in multiple departments because high staff turnover and long delays in responding to the needs and requests of residents. We know that attempts have been made to resolve the problems, but we continue to hear complaints. How would you go about improving staff morale, staff retention, and the speed and effectiveness of how the city processes projects through various departments? Lewis, you're up first.
Going first last time. No, I think, in general, any organization has challenges with staff. It's a current reality in our marketplace today. We have a lot of dated tools and dated documents that need refreshing so new staff can catch on a learning curve earlier. I think we need to figure out what is the right resolve and training process for new staff that comes in. The culture problem, I think, also is how you choose your leaders, how you choose your council members, how they represent our community, how they interact with people, how they inspire people. I believe I bring that part to the table, and I'm looking forward to help the morale, help the community service as it goes forward. Because I've done that on the DRB. I've created a healthy discussion. James, you've been at several of the hearings. It takes leadership to drive that change and conversation for the town, and I'm willing to put that effort in to make that happen.
Alex?
I'm going to have to quote Mike Bloomberg again when he says, in God we trust, everyone else bring data. I think having agreed upon performance metrics is really the key to this issue. So we can look at every month, get a report with comprehensive performance metrics to see how long it's taking, where the delays are. And that's going to be the guidelines or that's going to help us figure out how we could actually improve the process, whether it's new technology that makes it easier for applicants to submit applications and get instant feedback, whether it's things like having on a Friday, bringing building, planning, fire together in the same room to go over an application together to get rid of that back and forth, which can add a lot of time to the process. I don't know what the actual solution is to improve the process. That's up to the department to figure out. But as a council member, my job is to look at the budget. And if we have performance metrics as part of the budgeting process, then we can look at how we ensure we have continuous improvement and make sure that people get through the process as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Peter?
There's absolutely no morale issues or culture issues at the city of Laguna Beach. These are all made up comments that are meant to somehow or another take down the city manager, the head of community development, the chief of police. You know, this is part of that whole, if you tell the lie over and over again, people will start to believe it. And here we are a few months later, and we're discussing this as if it's a fact. There is not a fact here. This is simply conjured up by political resources that are trying to take out people that they can't control. It's so damn obvious that, you know, I'm happy to answer the question, but, you know, it's just ridiculous that we keep asking ourselves the same question. There is no culture problem in the city of Laguna Beach. We retain staff. If we don't retain staff, it's because they're moving away, retiring, or looking for more money. We need to maybe figure out how to pay them more. Maybe buying less buildings and less gardens would allow us to pay our employees more. But overall, our employees are doing an excellent job. Our police are doing an excellent job, and there is no culture problem. The culture problem lies within the activists that keep coming up with this nonsense.
Mark?
I think it's a little bit more difficult than just, not paying any attention to it. I do think it needs to be addressed, and the retention, you know, I understand that a lot of cities across the country are having difficult time, attracting and retaining employees, as other businesses are as well. I don't have the advantage as our current council does to look behind the curtain, so I'm sure that they have a better sense of the current conditions and attitudes with our current staff. I would think that if there are other ideas or things that could be explored to make staff feel better and improve the culture, I would be more than happy to look into that to see what we can do to make sure that the employees are as happy as possible.
Jerome?
The first step I take is to conduct a truly independent employee satisfaction survey issued by an outside firm. I demand that it be impartial, unbiased, anonymous, and totally independent, free of any agenda from the city that the city may be trying to prove. Over the past 4 years, we've had way too many expensive made as instructed surveys and studies conducted with the city's heavy hand on thumb on the scale. After the right results are ascertained, I would address the problems. I believe this is the start to retaining happy and valued employees and improve the operations of the city. It takes way too long to train new people, and we get cross direction trying to get processing done.
Sue?
Yeah, well, you know, I work more on fact and experience than anything else, but we have, every city is having turnovers. Every sector in the community, in the economy is having turnovers. We're hiring people from other cities. They're hiring from us. This is going on in every single city. This is not germane to us. And what I have found in working with this staff, and I've been working with them for 9 years now, Planning Commission and City Council, this is a very good staff. They work well together. And I'd hate to say this, but Sheree is the first one that's really invested in these employees. They did have an independent survey, so that's already been done, polled at 80%. But she's doing a lot of employee engagement. They're having employee outreach sessions. They're working on things that matter to them, making improvements in their work environment. So I applaud her for that. It's hard to navigate a big organization. I've done it in my career. It's very challenging. It's not as simple as people make it out to be, particularly in an environment like this.
Ruben?
Yeah, everybody's alluded to it. As residents, we really don't know what the truth is. We hear some people say that it's horrible, and other people say that it's great. So who can say what's so about that? We all know that a poll can be taken and the results skewed one way or another. The environment has to be created where people want to be there. I personally know 15 people that have been there over 10 years, maybe even longer. And there's a lot of work to be done at City Hall. And so people that love that environment where there's a lot of work to be done, obviously that person would thrive, and somebody else may not. It's hard to say, obviously, for us just to put a finger on something and say that it's wrong or it's right, but we do need to improve it. It's always room for improvement.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask everyone if you want to give a closing statement. I'll give you 90 seconds. And we'll start with Mark. Mark, you're muted.
Hey, it's my first time. Give me a break. Folks from around the world recognize Laguna as a special place and have an appreciation for its beauty and small town character. The charm is the result of years of hard work and citizen participation from our local community. Our community can do great things when it works together. I've been creating in this community ever since I've been here. I'd like to be a part of managing the changes ahead to make sure that we don't lose what makes Laguna a special place. Let's bring all the interest and voice together, our arts community, our business community, our citizens, to manage change. So whatever the future is, we can always be proud of our town. I'm asking for your vote this election season. Thank you.
Peter?
In 2018, I got elected on a very simple agenda: law and order, property rights, and lifting business restrictions that were stifling our downtown. I delivered on all three of my promises. In the next 4 years, I plan on exceeding past those promises and really making this a world-class dining and retail destination, making sure that we are a broken windows with zero tolerance when it comes to law and order in this community, and also returning our property rights. And actually, it's not returning our property rights, it's once and for all granting the property rights that the residents are entitled to, and moving away from the obstruction that Village Laguna and all of these proxy groups have put into our code over years that stifled our ability to remodel our homes. And I do eventually want to eliminate the DRB and just have an actual code that this is what it is, this is how high you can build, this is your setback, and that's it. Thank you.
Sue?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank South Laguna Civic Association for putting this forum together and the challenging questions. They were actually, some of these questions were kind of hard. Even as a council member, they were some of them like, I have to figure out what the answer to this question is. So I tend to be a very upbeat person. And optimistic. I always think, if we can make things better. I'm a solution-oriented person. I'm also a data-oriented person. So that's kind of the way I look at the world. I had an interesting first term. Of course, we had a couple fires. We were very fortunate not to have damage in our town. And when you run for council, you don't expect to have a worldwide pandemic. That was an interesting and challenging time for us. And we got through it really in pretty good financial shape. A lot of cities didn't, and we've emerged, I think, looking pretty good overall. We had some nuggets that came out of the pandemic. People like the outdoor dining, people like the promenade. I know we're going to be talking about that in a couple of days. So overall, I think the first term we're observing, it was challenging, it was fun, and in my second term, if I'm elected, my priorities are going to be really primarily three things. Public safety, since we've been through a fire, and I have to say, when you're the mayor of a town and you have a fire, even though people think of it as a figurehead, it's really a serious job. And also I want to focus on quality of life issues and financial stability, and just keeping my eye on the ball. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Lewis.
Yeah, James, I want to thank you for your time tonight, and thank South Laguna Civic Association and all those that participated in listening to us this evening. Thanks for taking the time and hearing us speak. For me, it's about commitment. I started my campaign early. I'm committed to this community. I've been serving this community for about 4.5 years now on different boards and processes. I'm committed to my family and continuing to make Laguna Beach a family-friendly community for all generations that live here. I bring experience. Being on the design review board is not an easy process. Aside from our incumbents, I'm the only one that sat on a decision entitlement board, and the public process is tricky. And one of the things I bring to the table a lot is how you deal with people. I have that experience in my professional life. I have that experience with my personal life, and I've had that experience in my volunteer life, right? And I've done so at a high level that's improved this for the community. I can bring that experience to the board and make the board or our council even better. I'm focused on three main things: infrastructure improvements citywide, safety, fire and police, and our overall continued support for the environment. Our community has a high desire for that, and I want to be part of those changes that make Laguna better. But most importantly, I want to make sure we're back to a community that works together, that we come up with our solutions, we come up ourselves in a public process, and we make Laguna better. That's what I stand for. Visit Lewis Weil for City Council 2022 and .com, and let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to speak with you. Thank you, James, again.
Alex.
Thank you so much to the South Laguna Civic Association. As I said before, I was lucky enough to be born and raised in South Laguna and to have Village Green Park as my bus stop. My grandma, my cousins, and my parents all live here in South Laguna, so I understand the community and I understand the challenges that South Laguna faces. Our trails are used more than ever before, our beaches are used more than ever before, and our fire risk has never been more significant. The problems facing South Laguna, just like the problems facing the city of Laguna Beach, are serious and complex, requiring cooperation between different levels of government and innovative approaches to find solutions. I have that experience. I've developed, as a policy advisor to Supervisor Foley, I've developed initiatives to reduce noise and pollution from John Wayne Airport. I've cracked down on illegal sober living homes in Newport Beach and Costa Mesa. And every week I conduct oversight and ask tough questions about how the county is spending its $8 billion budget. At the city, I've been the chair of the Housing and Human Services Committee, giving me an understanding of how things at the city work. It's important to recognize there are no easy solutions, but I remain optimistic that through hard work, innovative thinking, listening, and collaboration, we can find solutions and even common ground to preserve and enhance the Laguna Beach that we all love. Nobody will work harder on behalf of this town, and I want to thank you again for the scholarship, and I hope that after tonight's answers, there are no regrets. So thank you again. Have a good night.
Ruben.
Good job, Alex. James, and your kids, Ann and Greg, I want to thank you and the South Laguna Civic Association for putting this together. Sue's right, the questions were great, and the tour was great. If we could all just get a little tour of some other section of Laguna Beach once a month, we would all really greatly enjoy and appreciate our town a little bit more. What I think I can bring to this particular conversation and our town is let's bring back an economic vitality. We've seen in the last few years, actually probably the worst vitality to our town in a decade, maybe 2 decades. There's whole blocks that have no businesses on them. And our own hotel is still not functioning. So it's really in bad shape. Our trees need some big important help. I know that who I could be for this town is to bring back beauty into this town. I like what Peter says. We need some higher end stores. We need to bring in people that want to spend some money in Laguna rather than just come here and enjoy our beaches. Of course, we enjoy our beaches, but I really, really think that what I can do is bring back the vitality and bring back the beauty to Laguna Beach so that we're proud of where we live.
And Jerome, and unmute. Good job.
Well, thank you all for having us. I mean, it's a good exchange of ideas. I think we all appreciate it. The community appreciates it. First and foremost, I want you to know that I am not a developer. I'm not a realtor, a business owner, or a developer-backed politician. I have nothing to gain by running for office. I'm running to give residents a voice in our government and to preserve Laguna's charming quality of life. And if there's any place that needs a voice in Laguna's government, it's definitely South Laguna. I believe developer money has compromised our government, and in the process, it shut out our residents and put a concentrated emphasis on the downtown. And South Laguna has largely taken the brunt for it. Why is it that part of Laguna, which pays its taxes, always seems to be getting the short end of the stick? After all the protests with the Tiamo purchase, why did the city council stiff you and buy it anyway, without an appraisal or a feasibility study, killing what could have been a viable business and leaving you with a vacant building? Responsible purchase? I think not. I'm here to assure you that with me, you will find a champion in getting your full fair share. You will be treated with respect, with no verbal abuse or being ignored. Laguna needs a change in values and leadership, and I believe I can spearhead those changes. I ask for your vote and support in making South Laguna and all of Laguna a vastly better place to live. Thank you.
Awesome. I want to thank everyone for coming, spending the time, going through all of our questions, showing up at our forum. I think it's been a great experience. I feel like I've learned a lot. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know that well, and I've learned something from everyone. So I really appreciate it. I know the residents of South Laguna and Laguna in totality are appreciative of everything everyone's trying to do here. So thank you for coming to our forum.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Not everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
I don't know.